Good morning. Before I welcome, I want to just make sure to do something. It's the kind of thing I would forget to do. There's a misprint in the calendar on the order of service, and it says Sunday, May 5th, Fellowship Hour, 12 p.m., Hingham Community Center. That is a leftover from last week. We're going to be meeting down at 14 Main Street in our usual spot. Good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Hingham, and also known as Old Ship. I'm Clayton Handelman, a member of our Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are he and him. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather here as an open community that honors freedom of belief, encourages spiritual growth in ourselves and our children, and shares the wisdom of the many religious traditions with reverence for the earth and in service to humanity. We gather here on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts peoples, the original nation of this land. We are mindful that for Massachusetts peoples of every generation, this land is sacred. If you are visiting or newly attending our services, we would like to extend a warm welcome to you, and we invite you and everyone else to gather for coffee and conversation at 14 Main Street after the service, which is out here down and around Main Street. Down to the corner. It's the building on the corner on your right. Please note in your order of worship this week's schedule of events here at Old Ship. If you have any questions, please stop by our welcome table at coffee hour. Also, any member of our board would be happy to answer your questions, and we have the name tags with the pink around them. We're happy you are with us today, and we welcome you to bring all that you are to this congregation, your beliefs and traditions, your identity, your story, and the wisdom of your years. You are welcome here. If you are looking for inspiration, comfort, or connection, we hope that you will find it here. And Ellie Handelman has an announcement.
Next Sunday is Mother's Day. And in 1996, the annual Mother's Day Walk for Peace was started to support mothers of murdered children. Now the walk is an annual fundraiser for the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. They do many good works, including providing emotional and practical support for families of murder victims in the first 24 to 72 hours after a homicide. Old Ship will have a team walking, and you are invited to join us. We'll start in Dorchester at 8 a.m. with speakers, followed by a 4.3-mile walk, and you can expect to be home for lunch. If you'd like to join us or to support our team with a financial contribution, you can check out the links in the May newsletter or talk to me. Thank you.
The call to worship comes from the Song of Solomon. For now the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come. The fig tree puts forth its figs, and the vines are in blossom, they give forth fragrance.
Good morning. The chalice lighting this morning. Our prophets died for the freedom of faith. We are here in their spirit. We are here to practice and sustain our living tradition. To light a chalice claiming for justice the heat and power of fire. In our free faith, we are here, seeking freedom from despair, the freedom to be loved as ourselves, and the freedom to grow. We are here gathered in the name of all we find holy. Let us give thanks for the gift of gathering together.
Our opening hymn is number 1. May nothing evil cross this door.
Good morning. I'm Fan Leonard, member of the Pastoral Committee, and we're going to share our joys and concerns this morning. Joys are made greater, and concerns and sorrows may be eased by sharing. So if you would like to share, please raise your hand. Someone will bring you a microphone, and then if you will stand and tell us your name. We want to hear you.
Hello. Good morning, Eileen McIntyre, she, her. I wish that our community comes together and heals any wounds created by a somewhat contentious town meeting this past week. Past 2 weeks, really.
Yeah.
Ellie Handelman, she, her. I want to note that my fine husband's birthday is coming up on Tuesday, and I had one recently, so we're able to answer the age-old question, yes. Will you still love me when I'm 64?
I just want to share that we are delightful to hear that our daughter is coming back home. She's nearby. So we are happy that she went across country and had a great time. And now she'll be back home safe. So,
Thank you.
Janice McPhillips, my pronouns are she, her. I want to light a candle of joy for the trees and the flowers and the shrubs that seem so exuberant to me. Every year they take me by surprise and take my breath away. The cherry trees are out, the daffodils are out, the flowering plums and apples are out, and it just is so gorgeous. Thank you, Mother Nature.
Thank you.
Anything online?
The flower, the candles still burn for those who have something in their hearts that they have not expressed today.
Let's take a few moments of silent meditation. Mother Nature's Prayer by Ursula Goodenough. Our Mother, who art within us, hallowed be thy name. Thy ways evolve, thy will calls forth this earth that is now our heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and fill us with tenderness as we repair our trespasses, and lead us not into destruction, but deliver us into harmony. For thine is our source and our substrate and our glory forever and ever. Amen.
Today's reading is from the New Testament, Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 45, the Sermon on the Mount. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous.
Let us now have the righteous offering. you. Let it shine. Let your light shine. Is evil afloat? We are living through unprecedented times. We have major wars going on in Ukraine and Israel, while we have college campuses in an uproar, a Congress that gets almost nothing done, and a presidential race conducted at least partly from a courtroom where one of the major party candidates is on trial for felonies. A minister in times such as these wonders what he or she can talk about to be most helpful to the people in the pews. I've decided it might be time for a little reminder on good and evil, which of course will be good and evil according to Edmund Robinson. And then as you hear it, you will interpret it your way. Where does evil come from? The book of Genesis had two stories to explain how the world came about. One is the 7-day creation story, in which God forms a little more of the world every day for 6 days and then rests on the seventh. After each day's work, God saw that what he had created was good and pronounced it so. That is fine as far as it goes, but it doesn't explain why the world doesn't always work so smoothly. You would look in vain in the first creation story for any explanation of evil. The second creation story has Adam and Eve and the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And the serpent tempts the humans to disobey God and eat of the forbidden fruit. And God punishes them by expelling them from the garden and other painful things. The upshot of this story is that it is okay for God to declare that the serpent will have to crawl on his belly. Both humans will have to suffer death. Adam will have to work for a living, and Eve will have pain in bearing children. It's just okay for God to do that because they did wrong. Today, many of us no longer read the Bible or believe in the Garden of Eden story on any level, yet most of us will accept that it is morally just to impose some unpleasantness on those who have done wrong. Ellie read a passage this morning from the Sermon on the Mount, the famous eye for an eye rule. I talked about this a few months ago. The eye for an eye phrase is called the lex talionis, the law of the talion, not talon as in a bird's claw, but talion, which is cognate with our word retaliate. The principles goes back hundreds of years before Christ and can be found in the Code of Hammurabi in Babylon. It does not rule out retaliation. It just imposes a requirement of proportionality. If the attacker blinded you in one eye, you cannot blind him in two. The punishment must be proportional to the crime. But Jesus goes on in the Sermon on the Mount to supersede the lex talionis. He pretty clearly says, do not repay any evil with evil. St. Paul affirms that in the epistle to the Romans, quote, do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. This is St. Paul now saying this. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. No, quote, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink, for by doing this you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. St. Paul's epistle to the Romans. You have read or heard these words before, for after the horrific attack and hostage-taking by Hamas in Israel, there was a brief time before Israel responded. and I wrote a column expressing the hope that Israel could rise above the instinct for revenge, or at least adopt military measures which were proportional to the damage done by Hamas. Now, 7 months later, Israel has still not achieved its stated war aim of eliminating Hamas and is planning a larger incursion, even though the death count among Palestinians is in the hundreds of thousands. I am fervently praying for a ceasefire to be negotiated. But the issue of retaliation, retribution, seems to be popping up everywhere these days. It is in that Manhattan trial. It is in the demonstrations on college campuses. It is obviously on the battlefields of our wars. I wanted to devote the rest of my time this morning to one of the most powerful pictures of retaliation in fiction, and let you work out how this might apply to any figures on the contemporary landscape. Many of my Universalist forebears, committed to the idea of a loving God, concluded that evil was an illusion. There was no such thing. This strikes us at first as very odd and disquieting. We who live in countries where the dominant culture has been Christian are used to thinking of the world as a battleground between good and evil, the forces of good and evil. For that is the way the Gospels portray Jesus' ministry, and that is the way the Orthodox Church has portrayed life. Whether or not we say Orthodox creeds or go to Orthodox churches, we are all, as Westerners, very deeply imbued with this notion of the battle between good and evil, and it dominates our fiction. Universalist theology can admit evil as an adjective. There can be evil acts, evil thoughts, there could even be an evil system, but evil itself as a separate force countervailing the love of God does not exist. What Universalist theology denies is the existence of the free-floating evil. Yet Melville was not a Universalist. In Moby Dick, free-floating evil drives the story among three poles: the white whale, Ahab, and the ship's crew. Now, you may know that Moby Dick was actually fashioned on a real incident that happened in the South Seas with a ship called the Essex, where a whale turned around and rammed the ship while they were pursuing it. Melville was not on that ship. Melville was on a whaling ship a couple of years earlier, but he recollected that 20 years later and made that the centerpiece of his story. The whale in my book gets a bum rap. He is only defending himself. Most whales let themselves be killed, but it certainly doesn't strike me as evil when one of them sets about to destroy the humans trying to destroy it. Much less does the whale's original sin, chomping off Ahab's leg, merit the original revenge that Ahab has in mind. Ahab is clearly in the grips of an obsession, an evil obsession. At one point towards the end of the book, Starbuck, the first mate, who is the conscience of the book, tries one last time to turn Ahab from the mad pursuit of the white whale by reminding him that they both have wives and children waiting for their safe return back in Nantucket. But Ahab is having none of it. Starbuck says, "'Tis my Mary herself. She promised that my boy every morning should be carried to the hill to catch the first glimpse of his father's sail. Yes, yes, no more. It is done. We head for Nantucket. Come, my captain, study out the course and let us away. See the boy's face from the window, the boy's hand on the hill." End quote. But Ahab, wound up in his vengeance, is deaf to his mate's entreaties. His eyes were averted, says the narrator, like a blighted fruit tree. He shook and cast his last cindered apple to the soil. Ahab then delivers a remarkable soliloquy in which he confesses that he is so blinded by rage, he is not in control of his life or actions. Quote, "What is it? What nameless, inscrutable, unearthly thing is it? What cozening, hidden lord and master and cruel, remorseless emperor commands me, that against all natural lovings and longings, I so keep pushing and crowding and jamming myself on all the time, recklessly making me ready to do what in my own proper natural heart I durst not so much as dare? Is Ahab Ahab? Is it I, God, or who that lifts this arm? But if the great sun moved not of himself, but is as an errand boy in heaven, nor one single star can revolve, but by some invisible power, how then can this one small heart beat, this one small brain think thoughts, unless God does that beating, does that thinking, does that living, and not I? By heaven, man, we are turned round and round in this world like yonder windlass, and fate is the handspike. And all the time, lo, that smiling sky and this unsounded sea. Look, see yon albacore who put it into him to chase and fang that flying fish. Where do murderers go, man? Who's to doom when the judge himself is dragged to the bar? But it is a mild, mild wind and a mild-looking sky. And the air smells now as if it blew from a faraway meadow. They have been making hay somewhere under the slopes of the Andes, Starbuck, and the mowers are sleeping among the new-mown hay. Sleeping? Aye, toil we now we may, how we may, we all sleep at last on the field. Sleep? Aye, and rust amid greenness as last year's scythes flung down and left in the half-cut swaths. Starbuck! But blanched to a corpse's hue with despair, the mate had stolen away. To me, that passage shows Ahab with the consciousness that the mission on which he's embarked is murderous. At best, it will result in his crew killing the whale and thus consummating his revenge. At worst, the whole crew of innocent sailors will go to the bottom of the sea. Why is he the agent of this great evil? He tries to shift the blame to God or to the whale, but neither attempt is convincing. The narrator Ishmael has made no bones about his feeling that humans and animals both have an instinct for evil. At one point, he describes in a naturalistic way in this remarkable chapter called The Whiteness of the Whale, how a colt will react with fright to the smell of a buffalo hide, even though the colt was born and reared far from any buffalo. He posits that animals have a natural instinct for the demonic and says he shares that instinct particularly as regards the color white. Quote, "Thus then the muffled rollings of a milky sea, the bleak rustlings of the festooned frosts of mountains, the desolate shiftings of the windrowed snows of prairies, all these to Ishmael are as the shaking of that buffalo robe to the frightened colt. Though neither knows where lie the nameless things of which the mystic sign gives forth such hints, yet with me, as with the colt, somewhere those things must exist, though in many of its aspects this visible world seems formed in love, the invisible spheres were formed in fright." End quote. Now, as a plot device, this foreboding and fright, built up chapter after chapter into a screaming crescendo, is a masterstroke. We study fiction as a spiritual doorway, not for what it tells us about the actual world, but for what it tells us about people's perceptions of that world and about the minds and skills of authors. Good versus evil makes a crackling good story, and always has. But a universalist would assert that the world is actually formed in love. In Moby Dick, the maelstrom of evil which ends the book is seen in that ending to have been pulling the events of the story along inevitably into its maw. The narrator has brilliantly woven dire omens and warnings into the narrative throughout. And the ultimate denouement gives the reader the satisfaction of saying, there, I knew all along it would come to no good. Considered theologically, Moby Dick is striking in that it utterly denies salvation or redemption. The only character saved is the narrator, and that only by an accident of luck, without any change of character. I project this masterpiece of description upon the universalist theology that I love to see the contrast. If God is all good, if the world he created in 7 days was all good, there should be no revenge, no instinct for revenge, let alone an obsession that should drive an experienced ship captain halfway around the world to drown his crew in the course of exacting the revenge. Now, there is a problem with this exercise. There's an important distinction in thinking about evil between moral evil and natural evil. Moral evil only applies to things that happen because of actions humans have made based on their choices. Natural evils are those things such as floods or earthquakes or whales trying to save their lives by smashing the boats which are attacking them. It is unjust to attribute malice to an animal. If a wild animal threatens the life or health of a human, it may be necessary to kill him or her if cages won't do the trick, but it is a tragedy when that happens. Ahab, as portrayed in the novel, does not appreciate this distinction. He has allowed his will to be completely overwhelmed by a threat that has no more agency, no more consciousness, no more intention than a brick wall. If you saw someone trying to throw punches at a brick wall, wouldn't you consider them crazy? Andrea Del Banco, a keen culture critic, wrote a book entitled The Death of Satan, about how modernity has tried to transcend the old personifications of evil. But yet we still fall back into old habits of dividing the world between the clean and the polluted. He had a political example from the 1990s, but he could have chosen any piece of right-wing propaganda today. But if we want to understand what is happening, this is quoting Del Banco now, we can turn once again to Melville, who in 1850 had written a prophetic book about a man so horribly wounded that he directs his mind in manic concentrations towards his quest for revenge. Here in one of the transcendent passages in all of American literature is Melville's explanation of Captain Ahab's rage against the white whale, his insatiable need to find something on whom to fix the blame. Quote, all that most maddens and torments, all that stirs up the lees of things, all truth with malice in it, all that cracks the sinews and cakes the brain, all the subtle demonisms of life and thought, all evil to crazy Ahab were visibly personified and made practically assailable in Moby Dick. He piled upon the whale's white hump the sum of all the general rage and hate felt by his whole race from Adam down. And then, as if his chest had been a mortar, he burst his hot heart's shell upon it. May we all rise above the sickening instinct for retribution in our lives, in whatever context. Amen. Our homeward voyage is somewhat more pacific. Blue Boat Home, number 1064 in your teal hymnal. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice with the words of the order of service. We extinguish this flame, not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. Jesus, now in our hearts, until we are together. Amen. John Moyer, the founder of Universalism in America, said this at the end of his services: go out into the highways and byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. Amen. Now we have a logistical problem. We're going to have our talk back on the 7 principles today. If so, how many people think they want to come to that this afternoon? Okay, good. We've got enough of quorum. Should we send people down the hill, get their coffee, and then come back? Say, because we're finishing a little early this service. So let's say by 11:50. The coffee hour will be served down the hill, but come on back by 11:50. Okay? What's that? Oh, I don't know if we've got space. Do we have space down there? Oh, okay. All right, we'll have the talk down there. We'll have the talk in the parlor.